I'm Maria Schwartz along with Rachel Galligan, and welcome to the Winsidr show where it's all about the W. The LA Sparks, what's their roster situation, and what situations are they facing this free agency period? Let's dive in. If you like our show, please consider joining our Patreon community, patreon.com/Winsidr. For less than a cup of coffee a month, you can directly show support for the hard work we do covering the W. And don't forget to see our amazing staff's written content over at winsidr.com. That's winsidr.com. Download the episode. It makes our stats look better and allows us to continue doing this important work. And if you want to sponsor an episode or something else, email us info@winsidr.com. All right, let's hop into it. We're back at it. Free agency is just getting heated up, Rachel. It's slowly pressing forward. You ready for the LA Sparks?
Let's do it. As people are dropping things in my apartment just all over the place. Sorry about that.
It's all piss. All right. Let's look at who is currently on this LA Sparks roster and discuss, the cap space and the situation they're in. Let's run it down. Nneka Ogwumike, Chrissy Tolliver, Erica Wheeler, Gabby Williams, Amanda Zawi B, Shanae Ogwumike, Brittany Sykes, Jasmine Walker, Arella Garantes, and a training camp contract for Lauren Cox. They still have Nia Coffey, who was on the roster last year, who's unrestricted, and Taya Cooper, who is a reserve player. And then Maria Vadiva was suspended last year, but is she coming over? What's going to be her situation? They have 157 in cap space, 157,000 in caps. In cap space. This team, as a general thing, like this team has, in my opinion, obviously, I only speak my opinion, has so many role players, but the real problem is the protected contracts and the price tags of those protected contracts.
Mm-hmm.
Christy Tolliver is on the downside of her career. She shouldn't be making basically 200K. Erica Wheeler isn't getting 185 on any other team that I can imagine, except maybe her old team, the Fever. But they weren't even willing to pay that, right? Gabby Williams at 144 is not great either. It's not horrible considering the potential that she has, but that is a nice investment in her. Nneka at 196, okay, fine. Shanae at 116, it's not amazing for the team, but it's not horrible. And then Amanda Zawi B under 150, yes, I'm down for it. So my issue with this roster is their ability to make moves. And we've seen this with a plethora of other teams in this league where you have these protected contracts tied up with these players because that's just like in my mind, if you're giving a protected contract, there's a few ways to go about it. You're either doing it because that's the superstar of the future for your team, or they're like the key role player for the team. But normally, I think if you're giving a protected contract, and I've said this before in other episodes, there's an element of you're almost making up for a lack of salary. Does that make sense? Like if I'm giving Rachel a protected contract, I'm going to think, okay, like if it was an unprotected contract, I would give them, 10 to 15 to 20K more. But because it's a protected, I'm trying to make that argument as the GM to say, hey, lower the price tag because it's a guarantee, because it's protected, so that we can then go around and get other players with that extra change. So for me, it's just a really tough situation. And I'm going to be blunt here. GM Derek Fisher has not done a good job of building a team for long term success or short term, right? Now, long term, there's the argument, I'll play devil's advocate. There's the argument on the other side to say, okay, RA, but if you look at the 2023 roster, right, who do they have? Really, all they have is Jasmine Walker, Arella Garantes, right? Everyone else is a free agent of some sort. Besides, Gabby Williams is their only restricted free agent in that regard. So they have an insane amount of cap space. But the thing is, we're not talking about next season. And are the Sparks to a degree tanking for this season? Or I don't want to say tanking, but like if you're going to argue that, oh, after next season we have so much space to do whatever, you
Sure.
still need some sort of core, right? And I don't think anybody's going to be all high on Walker and Garantis to say like that's the core. And so there's the positives of a clean slate, there's the negatives of a clean slate. Typically, when you have a clean slate, that means you're a few more years from a championship run. But let's get back into this year. Rachel, looking at this roster, I went on a ridiculous 5 minute rant, so I apologize. But you know, in my mind, the situation we were talking about this before the episode is kind of like, the people that they have on protected contracts, not many teams in the league are going to want to pay that price tag and protected for that player.
Mhm.
The people that they don't have on protected contracts are the players of the future. Brittany Sykes, Jasmine Walker, Arella Grantis. Like those are the players. Um,
Yeah.
Taya Cooper, who's reserved. Like those are the players that you want on longer contracts, maybe even secured for a Brittany Sykes. I mean, I think a lot of people were shocked to see that she took such a team friendly deal to go to LA. So obviously, players and people still want to go to LA and play for that team. But I mean, I've just continued my rant. Sorry. Please talk, Rachel.
No, you're good. LA's really interesting to me. I mean, on one hand, like you're kind of like, damn, like what has gone on here? Their hands are tied behind their back. But then you step back, and I've been thinking a lot about this roster, and the more you talk, listening to you and analyzing it, you have a couple things in play. One, it's LA. People want to be in LA. There's a great deal of high profile free agents that I would guarantee are in conversation with LA. In order to make that happen, you'd have to move some people around the roster. I mean, a lot of people have talked about what would it look like for Liz Cambage to join the LA roster. I don't know if that's realistic or not at this point, but in order to bring in, someone along the lines of Liz Cambage, Jewel Lloyd, with the amount of money that she could potentially be seeking, you'd have to move, Tolliver, Amanda Zawiby, or Shanae. Um, I see that being a little bit more along the lines of Amanda Zawiby, maybe potentially getting traded or trying to move that and open up some cash. That's the only way you could potentially bring in someone in free agency. And I think this is a team that, it's interesting. Like last year, the amount of injuries with NECA. I mean, my God, how different is this team with a consistent NECA? You know that as well as I do.
Oh yeah.
Yes, Christy Tolliver at the tail end of her career. Gabby Williams, it's going to be very interesting to see Gabby Williams back in the W. It's going to be really interesting to see what she brings to this Sparks roster. I think, LA was so good on the defensive end of the floor, and I love some of their younger,
Shout out to LT.
hungry. Yeah. Shout out to Coach Tremmel. I love kind of the chip on this shoulder that some of the Erica Wheelers of this roster have. I think it's the Brittany Sykes. Like you have a great core of like culture there, or just edge to yourself defensively. Does Gabby Williams come in and help that? I mean, I don't know how she fits. I think that's going to be really interesting. And then you talk about the health of NECA. So I mean, yeah, like this and then we talk about Jasmine Walker. I mean, don't forget this is a team that gave up their first round pick because they believed in her that much. Now her injury was extremely unfortunate. We still don't know what Walker can do. But for a team to have that much faith in her, I think that speaks volumes. So there's a lot of unknowns, and a lot of health concerns. But man, it's like they're one piece away. If they could get one piece, and for me, it's the offensive end of the floor. For as much as this team struggled, I mean, I think they're going to be bought in defensively. But who do you add to this roster that can come in and bring that firepower, if you will, that can go get you a bucket? Is it Jewel Lloyd? Is it a Liz Cambage that you just pound it into inside it out? I think that
Well,
there's
Rachel, I want to
Diamond
attack you
Fields.
real
I
quick.
don't know. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just want to attack you because I love
Go
disagreeing with you.
ahead.
I think they're two moves away, and that's two moves in the sense of bringing people in. I agree they're gonna have to drop one of these bigs, right? Aneka, Shanae, Amanda Zowie B, and honestly, a Lauren Cox. They all kind of play a similar style, and I say this with all due respect. Amanda, Shanae, and Lauren Cox are the poor man's version of Aneka. And by that I mean they're just a worse version, right? Like the areas of skill set that they have
Your
are
analysis is
very
so blunt.
what? What?
Your analysis is just so funny, like how blunt it is. But no, keep going. You're good.
Well, cause I'm not gonna try and like beat around the bush
No,
here. Like
I
Amanda
understand.
Zawi B and
Sure.
Shanae both play like they're slightly undersized. They they can move like it's great defensively to have that extra undersize because typically that translates to a little bit more speed, a little bit more ability to get out to the to the 3-point line, defend those shots. But like in my mind at least, Nneka Ogwumike is at her best when you pair her with another big, with a
Hmm.
big who doesn't have the size deficiency that NECA has. Like one of the things that is like NECA would be one of the greatest players in WNBA history if she was like 3 inches taller, right? Like everything about her gameplay and her style is so amazing, but then it's even more so amazing when you realize that she's undersized compared to a lot of the people she's going up against. And I mean this in the full compliment that I hope anyone listening is taking this. So in my mind, like in a general scheme of things, you got to drop a Shanae or an Amanda Zawi B. Um the tricky part here is to say Amanda Zawi B at 139 or close to 150 versus a Shanae around 110, give or take a few, I would think, and honestly, maybe this is my anti nepotism showing. I would think that the move has to be to drop a Shanae Gumake. I mean,
I don't see
how
that.
many seasons have we seen her like actually play in the WNBA in
Sure.
comparison to the amount of years that like she could have played? Obviously, injuries, the bubble, like all of this stuff. I get it. There's many elements to it, but at the end of the day, I feel like, look, Amanda Zawi B has more experience. I mean, I think there could be a legitimate argue about it.
Yeah.
Maria Vadiva, we don't know her commitment to the W
Well,
anymore.
that's
Her
another thing
commitment
too.
to
Like,
LA.
does Vadiva? I mean, my God, there was so much stock in her as what she could do. Does she ever even come over? I mean, that changes this entire conversation. But I don't know that I see it. I don't know any different. I'm just saying like
Yeah,
the way the world is trending and the way things are going, especially with this summer and everything going on. Like I don't see Maria Vadiva coming over. So it's like I don't think the LA moves on from Shanae. I think it's more likely Amanda Zawi B if you can find a trade to work. But another name I didn't bring up before, an interesting one, Tina Charles. Um, you know, if you could convince her to come in, and obviously she wants a ring. I don't know that you could look at LA right now and say, "Oh man, this is a team that is an immediate contender." I don't know that anyone would say that, but if the stars aligned and you had a healthy roster, you had a healthy NECA, Gabby was playing well, you know, uh,
so you're essentially saying replace Amanda for Tina, and I'm not saying this in like a I disagree way. I think
I would. Hell
fine bringing
yeah.
Tina, but also it would be hilarious to see Amanda Zawi B be pushed out by Tina. Continue.
I mean, I'm just looking at what is that piece? Because right now, you think it's two moves away. I think it's one, and I say it's one move away from being in the top five. But also with
but wait, Rachel, is that saying like one move away is in one home run away, or like because
yes,
right, like
home
there's a
run.
difference between
One,
saying like
one, one high level free agent, a Jewel Lloyd, a Tina
hmm,
Charles, a Liz Cambage, whoever you can attract there, and you can move the pieces around. You need a star. You need a star, and you need someone who's consistent because there's some inconsistencies from a health standpoint on this roster. Is NECA gonna play? Is Shanae gonna play? I mean, it's like we go down the line. This team hasn't even been at full strength. Um, Tolliver, she's not going to get moved, but she's Krista Tolliver. She's going to be able to do this team a service, but just from her intelligence on the court. What does Gabby Williams bring? So I don't
so
know.
I
I think
guess
it's interesting. You need a star. You
no,
need to go get a
I
game.
completely agree with that.
Yeah.
I guess the question that I have for you because you are the smarter basketball mind, um, is I guess like is it for you any star or like typically we try and isolate into three categories of a roster, right? The bigs, the wings, and the point guards, or the true guards. I guess for you, is it as simple as saying if they add a star in any three of those categories? Because for me, the wing, like they have the athleticism of a Gabby, of a Brittany Sykes. I'm excited to see what we can get from Walker, a little bit more from Arella. Like Nia Coffey is another, and another player that I'm a fan of. Shout out to Minnesota. But the thing for me is like
I think
I
it's the
look at it best available.
one that you can get that fits your culture. That's not going to drag your culture down. This is another culture situation where like you've already built up this young kind of
Using those
hungry.
keywords, Rachel.
What? What do you say?
Using those keywords.
I think that culture. It is though. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. And
No, but so I guess my question is because like when I look at it as the 1 or 2 guard and then the 5 or the 4, right? So like basically I view it as and this is similar. I'm blanking on which team we were talking about the other day when we did a recording. We were talking about this. Like I guess it's slightly similar to Minnesota in some ways, but I hate bringing up Minnesota with the Sparks because I hate that they're always talked about in the same breath. But I just think they have a lot of depth and potential in the core of their team in the wings. My thing is I would like to see NECA paired with, all right, we're talking about players to like I will give you a list of 4 players and I've added Tina to the list. 4 players, or 3 from me and 1 from Rachel that I think um I agree with. I agree with Lloyd. I think, you add Lloyd, she essentially takes over the Christy Tolliver position. And then you have Tolliver coming off the bench with at that price tag is quite frustrating. Yes, I know. But there's also a reality that you could move Tolliver to a team like, Seattle if they're losing Lloyd. I cap wise, I'm not thinking about the cap of the other teams when I say this.
right.
But there is a situation where I could see a Christy Tolliver being moved to a team that feels like they're on the cusp and they just need that extra star power. Because Christy Tolliver's still a star. I'm not saying she's not a star. I'm just saying she's on the downswing of her career. And realistically, like, I don't know if we talked about this with
Well,
Angel
and let's be
McCautry and
honest, this is not the situation Tolliver expected to be walking into.
oh, 100%. 100%. And that's my thing is like this team has changed so much from what we expected when I mean that moves feels like it happened a year or two ago.
Even
Yeah,
a year
well, it did
ago.
happen 2 years. Yeah, it feels like it just happened. Like for me it's as simple as this. You want to make a move um you want to make a move that puts you in a situation to pair NECA next to another big because I truly believe you want like NECA is still the cornerstone and leader of this team, and you want to keep her because I know there's been a lot of rumblings of a lot of rumors, a lot of people in the Twitter sphere, tweeting about NECA moving to Dallas or NECA moving here, blah blah blah. I think if you're LA, you're saying NECA, like give us this year, let us show what we're serious about, and then we can talk about furthering your career here. Because I do think if you pair NECA with a Liz Cambage, a Tina Charles, you're talking about a very different team. And then I'm more inclined to agree with you. I still have issues with Christy Tolliver, Erica Wheeler, but the more that I dig myself into this hole of going on long rants, Rachel, the more I think that pairing NECA, I'll even step away from saying that it's a 2 move thing. I'll agree with you. If they can find a true big like Tina or Liz, um, to pair with NECA, because the reason I like both of those is they can shoot from a variety of places on the court.
Mhm.
And the beauty of NECA is NECA has the ability to shoot from a variety of places on the court also, but you don't want another big paired with her that's going to spend too much time in the paint when they don't have the ball,
Yeah.
right? Like you want to give NECA her space to do what she does. And I
Mhm.
and that's why I think like pairing her with when she was paired with a Candace Parker, we saw the greatness of NECA because she had that ability to kind of be a jack of all trades.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I think I'm a little more. It depends. Again, it really just comes down to who can you attract and who is willing to make that jump. To me, I keep coming back to like a Tina Charles or a Jewel Lloyd is what this team needs. But it's just depending on who's willing to come and who's wanting to come and what that looks like. Then this team has enough versatility to kind of structure around that. But you sell it on like, hey, you get to be literally like, I mean, the future of this franchise, the future face of this franchise. Like Jewel Lloyd, you
And
don't
it's a
want to
big
be
name
third fiddle
franchise.
anymore. You could come in here and be the face of LA. Tina Charles, okay. I mean, like we could talk about how much longer you're playing, but man, after you did what after you did last year, like if you could sell her on that, um, I just they need either a that star power presence inside or just that dynamic guard that can go get a bucket at any point. And to me, that's Jewel Lloyd.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the interesting aspect, and as we were talking about, I might have already mentioned this, but as we were talking about before we hopped on the show, and then I'll be done for the episode, is just it's one of those situations where because they have so many protected contracts and their future, quote unquote, is unprotected contract wise, it's a situation of who can they attract and who can they find a suitor to take some of these contracts off of them.
Right.
It's not just
Getting this
attracting somebody
done.
because
Yeah.
then they have other work to do. This isn't the Atlanta Dream. This isn't some of these other teams that
Right.
have the cap space to just make it work. They're going to have to do some finagling, which
Yep.
is, I
You have
mean,
to trade and move people. But the
and
difference
this
is
is,
you're LA. You're LA, like they have a
mhm,
one up with that, in my opinion.
yeah, no, totally. I mean, I was just going to say that like this is going to make or break Derek Fisher. He's had a very respectable regular
100%.
season record,
100%. I agree.
a horrible playoff record, a jury still out on the GM aspect, but right now, gotta say it's not looking good. Any final thoughts on LA before we finish this episode?
No, I agree. This is a huge year. If it goes south, um, it easily could go south. I think that this team easily could surprise some people as well because of the pieces you have coming back, and if you have, knock on wood, the luck of the health aspect, which this team did not have last year, we have to keep that in consideration. I think that LA could be a strong team in this league, but it's like wide open at this point, and all eyes are on Derek Fisher. And this is, like you said before, you said it perfectly. I believe I agree. This year is going to make or break him in terms of the moves that are made and the future, of his time with LA, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm RA Shorts. That was Rachel Galligan, and we'll be back next time with another episode of the Winsidr Show.